Podcasting, the final frontier. This is the official document of an episode that breaks down what it means to be a fan, when you devote so much of your time and energy towards a piece of art made by those who are exhausted and ashamed of their own creation. Our hosts Chris and Altaf will boldly go where no man has gone before and break down a movie that is satirical, heartfelt, and silly all at the same time. They will face the mics with utmost courage. They will never give up, never surrender. This is Galaxy Quest.
That wasn't the actual Galaxy Quest theme. That was just me making up heroic music, just to be clear.
Yeah. Yeah. That was sick.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw. I was looking at the camera, giving like poses while you were giving the narration too.
I know.
That was fun.
Are you a Star Trek fan?
No. Well, I mean, I'm not anti-Star Trek. I respect Star Trek a lot, actually. I've seen episodes here and there, and I understand the gist of it, for sure, but I've never actually, watched it. And it just gets more and more intimidating as time goes on, because now there's so many fucking shows and seasons, and it goes on so long.
Yeah, I've seen Next Generation. I've seen, episodes here and there. A lot of it was when I was younger, and it would come on TV on weekends.
Okay.
Next Generation would always be in syndication, and that's my experience with Star Trek. But I would always just watch it whenever it was on. I never watched it as a dedicated fan, and so it was interesting hopping into this movie about a year ago. We reacted to this January 2023 on our main channel.
Yeah.
And not hopping into it not as a Star Trek fan, knowing that it was going to be kind of a parody of Star Trek. But if you watch our reaction, I had no idea what I was jumping into with this movie. And I think you and I talk about that reaction with a lot of fondness of just what a joy not only that movie is, but it was so much fun making that video.
It was a really fun one because I saw it a lot as a kid. I grew up I owned it on DVD. And so my part of the fun when we did that reaction was watching you react to it, and also it reignited my joy for the movie at the same time because it's been so long. So even while we were recording, I remember early on I kind of over-talked. Oh yeah, that's the Picard, or that's the whatever. I kept kind of jumping in, and you ended up having to pause and be like, okay, listen, I'm glad you're excited, but you've already seen this, and so you should try to let me react and breathe a little bit, because you're kind of reacting for me a little bit.
Well, it was an interesting dynamic. Yeah, obviously that's not in the actual cut of the reaction. It was in between takes, but yeah. It was an interesting dynamic because that's usually me. I have to be if it's a movie that you haven't seen but I have to hold myself back, and you'll be the one to tell me listen, man, you're not letting me react that much. And it was a weird change,
which speaks for the movie though, because my love for this movie is infinite.
Yeah. And I'm just going to introduce the podcast really quickly. Yeah. And I want to talk about what it was like rewatching this for the first time since our reaction. So welcome to Movies That Changed Us. I'm Altaf.
And I'm Chris.
And today we're going to explore how Galaxy Quest changed us. And if you are listening to this, you can also watch us on YouTube at Movies That Changed Us.
And we also have a Patreon. If any of you lovely fans want to support us, we do weekly commentary tracks in there, so you can watch movies with us. And we also have early access to videos with no ads attached to them. So some fun stuff. Feel free to check it out. It's on patreon.com/nicedudemovienight.
You want to say really quickly what commentary tracks we're doing right now on our Patreon?
We're fucking doing Adam Sandler movies.
Well, I want to be specific here. So I was pushing that we put up a poll every time we finish a series of commentary tracks. Our last series we did the Back to the Future trilogy. And when we put up the poll, I was pushing for we did Jim Carrey classics. Let's on the poll put an option as Adam Sandler classics, specifically Happy Madison movies. I didn't want to do the Adam Sandler serious acting, he's a good actor projects like Uncut Gems or Punch Drunk Love. And fingers crossed, I was hoping it would win, and our fans are great. They voted for it. So we're going to be dedicating a month and a half to Happy Madison
We're
movies.
doing, The Water Boy, Billy Madison, Happy Gilmore, Wedding Singer, Click, and Big Daddy. I believe that's the collection we're doing.
We're ending it with Click. We're going in chronological order.
Yes.
So I was really fighting for ending it with Grown Ups, but you won that fight.
I got a little victory in this.
So like I said, you had seen this as a kid. I think in the reaction you said you owned the VHS to this.
It wasn't VHS, it was DVD. But yeah.
The DVD to this. This was my first time watching it since we did the reaction. Funny enough, I've like rewatched our reaction to this movie a lot because it is just one of my favorite videos that we've made. It has everything that I think is special about our reaction channel. And I'm tooting my own horn, but I don't care. But like, I think the best stuff that comes out of our reaction channel is when you and I are appreciative about the craft that comes with the silliness. I think that's why our Mel Brooks movies people
Monty
love.
Python, all that.
And I feel like Galaxy Quest is like the perfect example of that. But watching this movie again, I texted you this. I just straight up like had tears, like 3 times I teared up. And I think I said to you, I was like, I'm starting to feel like Kevin Smith now. I'm just like,
everything makes you cry.
Yeah, I am a big crier now. But like this movie especially, so many times I was like, oh my God, wow.
Let me ask you a question though. Have you always been a crier in movies, or is this like a newer thing that is like a byproduct of getting older?
Byproduct of getting older. So when I was younger, if I cried, it was a moment in a movie that was intentionally trying to make you cry. Like, you know, E.T., you think he died, and Elliot's saying goodbye to E.T., but then
the ending, of course.
And the ending. So stuff like that. As I'm getting older, I'm crying at moments that are just making me like overjoyed that like this is happening in the screen in front of me and I can't believe it. For instance, the Welcome to Jurassic Park scene, the scene that we all know, Sam Neill with the glasses, they do move in herds, all
when
that.
they first see the Brachiosaurus.
When I watch that, makes me cry.
Yeah.
And it's not because anything on the movie's not trying to make you cry, but it's just like, I'm just overblown. Like, it's like nerd tears almost. And that's kind of what was happening with this movie. And with me, I don't know what it was, and I want to explore it. There's 3 moments specifically.
Yeah.
That we'll get to, but I think it was just the fact that like everyone showed up for this movie and it's so sincere.
Well, that's the biggest thing that separates it from other like kind of movies within movies, or any movies that are about fiction or about novel writers or anything like that, is usually those movies tend to be a little snarky. You know, like Tropic Thunder is probably the closest parallel I can think of with Galaxy Quest.
Yeah, that's true, I guess.
But Tropic Thunder is way more snarky, right? Tropic Thunder, there's no real sincerity in that movie.
Yeah, I think like it definitely leans more on just the crazy silliness, especially when Tom Cruise shows up in that movie.
And that's fine. Tropic Thunder is an enjoyable movie. I'm not really digging at Tropic Thunder, but I just think Galaxy Quest is just elevated that much more because it does take itself very seriously as a movie and has clearly a love towards that fandom that is kind of spoofing at the same time.
Yeah, and it has a lot of stuff working for it, but specifically, it's the fact that it's able to be cynical and sincere at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, it's able to make fun of the idea of fandom, super fans being, like, very nerdy about how a certain ship in a show they love is built and the mechanics of it, especially Justin Long's character. But then by the end of the movie, they celebrate that. In a very literal way of Justin Long being like the hero, and like the fans are the ones that saved the characters, right? But and that's very literal, but you can also look at it as the way of the movie saying that, look, the people who are super nerdy about this kind of stuff, yeah, they're ridiculous, they're very silly, but they are what make it special.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can also acknowledge and appreciate the role that fiction plays in their lives, you know, because some people are just fucking bored or don't have much going on or aren't respected in school the way they should be. And, you know, good fiction that can kind of stimulate your intellect can be like a perfect outlet for it.
Well, then, and the movie, like, you know, Tim Allen's character, Jason Nesmith, or is it Naismith?
I think it's Nesmith.
He has the line in the Galaxy Quest show that the movie's about. His line is never give up, never surrender. And when we first see that in the movie, it's like they're doing like a cheesy Star Trek, like one-liner.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Even the way he poses on the chair, like the very Captain Kirk.
By the end of the movie, the real magic trick of this movie is that Alan Rickman's character, when he sees this alien sacrifice himself and says, "It's been an honor," Alan Rickman in full sincerity says to him, "By Grabthar's hammer, you shall be avenged." Yeah. And he means it. and tears just went down my eyes. I'm like, oh my God.
And you can see his smile too when he hears it, like as he's dying.
Yeah.
You can see his face just kind of light up for a moment.
And I couldn't believe that movie, like the fact that a movie like this is able to pull that scene off with full sincerity.
Yeah.
There's not even a moment where, like, you know, in a cheesy way, Alan Rickman's like, I can't believe I really said that or whatever.
Yeah.
In that moment, it's not a joke.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd love to get like more. Like my instinct is like, oh, let's talk about that moment, you know. But I think we should probably wait. But while you're walking through the scenes you cried through, right?
Yeah. Really quickly, as a broad picture, another one was when obviously, and I really want to just like touch this and not really go into it right now.
Sure.
But it's when Jason has to like apologize to Mathesar.
Yeah.
Played brilliantly by, I just want to shout him out, Enrico Colantoni. I texted you, I'm like, this actor should have been nominated. Like, this is it's an amazing performance. I have actually never seen anything like this.
Yeah, I know. The whole aliens are just, they're so fucking funny. I have such good memories of them, like as kids. Just the way they walk with their little knees up and the way they talk.
I remember seeing our reaction, how like I freaked out when I saw Rainn Wilson in the corner.
I think I told you this on the phone, but I think one of like a weirdly specific memory I have with the aliens, it was with Mathesar, was when he first sees him at the convention and how Tim Allen, in the middle of talking, pokes his stomach or like his chest, you know, his sternum area, and he just does a little like a little noise when he gets touched.
Oh my God. His like laughs and his like crying is like, it's like when he laughs, it's hilarious. And when he cries, even though he's making a ridiculous sound,
it works, man.
Well, so that apology scene,
Yeah.
and then the third one was still with Mathesar, when at the end he gets the final hit to Saris, he like knocks him out, and then he looks and he's like, "Never give up, never surrender." I'm getting emotional talking about it, like, but I'm just like, my fucking guy, like,
Yeah.
and I think the reason I'm getting emotional is because I have a complicated relationship with the idea of fandom. Mm-hmm. And this is, I think maybe we can start here.
Yeah. Let's get into it.
You brought this up to me a few days ago when we were thinking about doing this podcast and we were rewatching this movie. I don't have a specific thing that I'm a super fan of. I never have. Like growing up, like I liked Lord of the Rings. I like Star Wars. I played video games in passing, but not as much. And, like I like superheroes and I read some comics. Like Spider-Man might be my thing, but not to the extent it is for some people, you know? And so I never had that one thing that I was like, I know everything about this. Aside from maybe Harry Potter. Like Harry Potter was like, I read all the books multiple times. I watched all the movies. But even Harry Potter is like weird to talk about now.
Yeah.
And so I've always had kind of not a fully cynical look at fans, because I'm still like a big movie fan. I'm still a nerd in that sense, but I was always kind of weirded out by the idea of someone devoting like so much of their time and lives into like this one thing. Like, you know, you go to the Star Wars celebration, everyone has their lightsabers. I'm super like cynical about that. And so I always had that kind of feeling about it. And this movie, in a kind of, when you're talking about the title of this podcast, Movies That Changed Us, even though I watched this movie just last year, it changed my perspective on fandom.
Sure.
But like, what about you? What's your relationship with fandom like? I think you have a different like background with it than I am.
Yeah, I mean, like I have a couple things I'm a pretty big fan of. I think growing up, I'm still to this day a huge fan of Fallout, for example. You know, when the Fallout show came out, every time we talk on the phone about an episode you watched, I'm able to just add all of this context for the lore.
I'm gonna take a quick picture of your Nuka-Cola cap and then we'll put it on the podcast. So right here. All right, we'll just pop it up there. But
yeah, I have a Nuka-Cola bottle cap tattooed on my arm. It was my second tattoo.
And this was before the Amazon show came out. Like this, I just want to tell people like he is there. He's a real one.
But thanks, man.
He likes New Vegas. He's a real head. All right,
he likes New Vegas. Okay,
he isn't a guy that just played Fallout 4. Like he will rant about me, a guy who's never played any of the games, of why like I should never touch 4, why New Vegas is the one. Like, no.
Hey, 4, I don't hate 4. Okay, just to be clear, guys. Anyway, though, but
he's a real head, is all I'm trying to say.
Totally. I love Fallout. I do love Star Wars. I lost touch with my Star Wars fandom a little bit, but when I was young, I was super hardcore into Star Wars.
You have the blaster like on your arm.
Yeah. It's also inked on my arm. We'll pop a picture of it as well.
Yeah.
But That, and then also, this is a weird one, but Grand Theft Auto, like, there's a lot of lore in Grand Theft Auto that I do get really into and dorky about.
Well, when I met you, that was a thing that really surprised me. You would talk about GTA in a way that, like, not many of my friends in the past have, which is, like, you talk about the story. You talk about, like, this is, like, if you gotta play Ballad of Gay Tony. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah. I know, yeah, exactly. And then this character comes back in 5, and then Rocco, and then...
Like, GTA, I like GTA 5. GTA 4 has the best story. Like, it's like... I'm explaining this for the audience so they know that you're not a surface level fan.
Yeah, those are like my 3 main properties that I get pretty into, you know? And so I guess just to answer, going into what my relationship with fandom is I do get really into that stuff. I'm not one to like go to conventions or dress up or do all that stuff. No hate or shade towards anyone that does. I'm just very much kind of a personal fan.
It's internal.
It's internal. I like to like watch videos online, but I will spend time watching video essays, analyzing shit, you know?
Yeah, you're like, you'll explain what this alien in the cantina, what that guy's name is. You'll know the background a little bit. And I think I remember you telling me this. So like, I'm not rooting against Star Wars. I like Star Wars, but my fandom goes as far as like, I like the movies a lot, right? And I've seen all the movies, I've seen some of the shows, and that's as far as it goes. I haven't read the books, haven't played the games, and you have. Like, you know what I mean? You know a lot about the video game stuff surrounding Star Wars. But you told me you're always a little bit more smug than I am about when like a show is, when something new with Star Wars comes out and is bad. And Chris was talking about me. And it's true. Like when something that's bad, now I'm at a point where I'm like, well, of course it's bad, you know, like this, that, and that. I'm a bit more cynical towards it. And you were telling me, you're like, but for me, it actually sucks. Like, it actually hurts a little bit when something in Star Wars comes out and is bad. Because it means something more to me. And I think that's what I mean by, like, I think this movie, especially rewatching it, it kind of changed my perspective of, like, it's okay to be a surface level fan of something. You don't have to be a super fan. But, like, there's a reason why these people love this stuff so much. Because it helps them, it helps them get through life. And I think the real fans and what they were looking at is Mathasar and the aliens.
Yeah.
And I think I think the, Alan Rickman's character really goes through the real arc of understanding why the stuff that he's made is actually special to those people. Yeah. You know? Well,
that's what Qualek says as he's dying when he says, like, forgive my impertinence, sir, but I always saw you as a father figure to me.
And that's so real for a lot of people who grow up with, like, whatever they're a super fan of. Is like, you know, people who grew up with Lord of the Rings, like the hobbits are their friends. Yeah. You know?
Yeah, fictional characters can be inspirational or used as beacons for who, you know, because people always say this about, if you're going off of Lord of the Rings, where they say, everybody says they want a friend like Sam, but everyone should be saying they want to be like Sam. Yeah. And I think it is a meaningful thing that people can use fiction as like a way to inspire you to do good, to believe in good, or whatever it is that certain piece of fiction will explore.
I mean, it's with movies too. You know what I mean? Like, at least my relationship is like art in general, especially movies for me, but art in general helps you understand yourself.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what art is, right? Hopefully. Or understanding the world, or understanding other people, or being able to empathize with someone else's expression.
I remember Donald Glover broke down like what it means to be a nerd about something. And he said that like being a nerd is working at something that you really love. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like working really hard to love something.
That's so true. Because sometimes it becomes not fun to be a nerd, but you do it because you're so committed to it at this point.
Yeah, like because like that's your thing. That's what you want to do. I think like, where do you want to like go from here? Do you want to talk about like the performances? Because I do think that it is kind of a miracle that everyone, like I said in the beginning of this podcast, showed the fuck up.
Yeah. I think it's definitely like, every performance knows exactly what the movie is in the most sincere way, you know?
Yeah, and so I want to start a little bit with Tim Allen. So my relationship with Tim Allen is I watched Home Improvement on TV, like when it would come on as like reruns or whatever. And I was familiar with that. But my primary relationship with him was the Santa Claus movies.
I totally forget your affection for those movies.
Well, I just grew up with them. Like I saw the first one at home. Yeah. But I saw 2 and 3 in theaters when they came out.
Sure.
So like that, for me, that was Tim Allen. And it was a little bit of the Home Improvement character, but it was primarily that. And then it was Toy Story, but I never associated like Tim Allen with that. I
had that.
That was Buzz for me, right? It was as an adult being like, the guy who played Santa Claus was also Buzz Lightyear. That's crazy. For you, it was Toy Story primarily.
Big time, yeah. I mean, Toy Story and Galaxy Quest. Honestly, I saw Galaxy Quest when I was probably like 6 or 7 years old, or whenever it came out.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, and like I said, I owned it. I loved that movie as a kid. I did not see the Santa Claus movies growing up. I maybe watched them like once in passing, but I wasn't like a fan of them the way you are. So I always forget about those movies. So when you bring up Santa Claus, I was like, oh god damn it. And also, I want you to mention too, you made Tim Allen a sandwich.
Yeah. Oh, okay. That's a fun. Okay. So yeah, really quickly, this was my like second year in LA. I had a job at Subway. Worked there for like 3 months. Yeah, probably the worst job I've ever had. And it was my first day working there. And I was just like learning how to make sandwiches, and there was someone training me, and the person literally told me, he's like, okay, the next person that comes in, you make it, and we won't tell you what to do. You make it. And next person that comes in is fucking Tim Allen.
So that was not just your first day, but your first customer? Like, I actually didn't know that
first
part.
Customer without like someone like training me. Like,
yeah.
Because I was just shadowing. It's like, okay, you make the next sandwich and we'll just be here, but just you make it, you handle it, and you ring them up. And that person was Tim Allen. And he showed up with a friend of his that I didn't recognize, but he just showed up. He's like, yeah, so I'll just get the tuna sub and just this. And I'm like making him like... For listeners, I was just looking up and down, just being like, and he probably knew that I recognized him. But I didn't say anything. I didn't say I was a fan because it was also my first day at the job and I didn't want to fuck it up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you didn't want to bother him.
And also, I'd been living in LA for a year and I learned from people, especially you, just being like, listen, if you see a celebrity, just be fucking cool about it. Like, they're like, don't like go crazy.
Especially if they're just ordering a sandwich or something like that. You don't want to bother them.
And yeah, so I made him a sandwich. That's a story, but it was just really weird.
Yeah, I don't know why it's so funny to imagine Tim Allen just going to Subway of all places to eat.
The Denny's we would go to, you and me. Like, remember the Denny's in...
oh, that waiter who would always say that Tim Allen came in?
So we'd go to this Denny's in the Valley.
Yeah.
And not to dox us, but...
or dox Tim Allen.
But we'd go to Denny's in the Valley, and, like, this waiter would come up and, like... He would do this obviously to like, you know, charm us and maybe get some tips so that you could see what he was doing. But he would always like serve you and me. Like he would always be our guy. And he would be like, hey, yeah, so I saw me and my kid, we were driving down and we saw Kobe Bryant. Like he would always have a celebrity story. And the one that he would always talk about was Tim Allen.
Yeah, that was the one that kept coming back. Where he was like, hey, sign this for my son.
And he would have like, and like he had like this Batman like utility belt. He would like pull out pictures from his like holster and just be like, here's the photo with me and Tim Allen. Like, and so it was just like interesting to be like Tim Allen just roaming around big United States US food chains in the Valley. Like he just shows up to Taco Bell next.
Well, that waiter was also just a character too. I won't go on too long about it. We'll focus on the movie, but I remember he used to pass through and he would literally shout, "Hot stuff coming through, hot stuff come." Like he just loved his job.
Yeah, I know. But Tim Allen specifically, he's so good at this type of role.
Yeah.
Which is, I was telling you as we were prepping for this podcast, it's basically the thing that Tarantino talked about with Bill Murray. Bill Murray was always like a scummy asshole in the beginning, and then he turned into a teddy bear at the end. A lot of his movies do that. Tim Allen was kind of that. He would be a kind of a douche in the beginning and would turn out to have like an arc and be the nice guy at the end, you know, and go through some things. He did that in Santa Claus all the time. Buzz Lightyear, like in the first movie, at least, that's what he's doing. He's full of himself, pretentious, like kind of a movie star.
Well, he exactly. There's a weird parallel with. I'm glad you brought that up because there is a weird parallel with him being in the delusion that he is the fictional character.
And then Galaxy Quest, where that's literally what he's doing.
Exactly. So it is really interesting. It's like it's a cool sci-fi parallel.
Exactly. And he is so good at this. And like, he's believable when he shows up late in the waiting room before the convention and he has a sunglass. He's like, hey, what's up?
Oh yeah, and he does gigs without inviting them to it too. He's so like me the whole time.
I heard recently on a podcast that was talking about Galaxy Quest, and they were like, Galaxy Quest is so good. You know, Alan Rickman's great. Sigourney Weaver's really funny in it. And, you know, Tim Allen's kind of there. And I like had my headphones on. I'm like, what?
I know, it's a ridiculous take.
Like, this might be Tim Allen's best performance.
I think it is, at least from what I've seen. I haven't gone too deep in the Tim Allen rabbit hole of any dramatic performances he's done, but that one, like, by far has the most depth, you know? More than Christmas with the Cranks.
Yeah, or, I mean, let's not forget Shaggy Dog. Now, while Shaggy Dog is great, but
Yeah, no shade towards the Shaggy Dog fans. Say that. Try saying that.
No shade towards the Shaggy Dog fans.
Okay.
There, I said it.
You are a better speaker than I am.
This is why I'm the king of podcasting. Give me the golden mic. I stole that bit from Jake and Amir. That's not... Anyways. I just want people who are Jake and Amir fans to be like, don't do the golden mic bit and pretend it's your own.
Yeah, of course.
Anyways, I was kind of like, I was kind of blown away that they were like just shunning away Tim Allen, because I'm like, I think he, like, not only is he the center of the movie, right? He is obviously the lead, but also like his performance and the way he carries that, and especially that scene where he's apologizing to Mathesar. I mean, like, that's the movie. It doesn't work without him.
Yeah.
So, but that being said, do you want to talk about Alan Rickman?
Fuck yeah, I want to talk about Alan Rickman.
So it is so interesting watching him in this movie, because not only is he one of our great actors, and it's always a joy seeing him, and it's kind of like watching Philip Seymour Hoffman in a movie now, where every time I see him, I'm like, oh man, I miss this guy.
Yeah.
I miss seeing him on screen. It's also funny watching him do this, because it's like, after this movie, he played Severus Snape for 10 years.
Yeah, his most iconic role that everyone knows him for several years.
So he kind of became the character that he's playing in this movie, which is this actor that was... he did a lot of genre movies, right? Like, he did...
I mean, Die Hard. He's the villain of Die Hard.
And he also did The Prince of Thieves, where he basically steals that movie away from Kevin Costner. He's amazing in it.
Okay.
But he was a stage actor, a serious stage actor, and then became known to play basically one character. Like, for our generation, we love Die Hard, and maybe there's some people that still love that Prince of Thieves movie, but for us, he will be Snape.
Yeah, he will always be our Snape.
And so it is just funny watching him do this character in this movie.
Yeah, I know. It is really interesting. I wonder, because I don't know anything about how Alan Rickman looks at his role as Snape. Do you know anything about that?
Very lovingly. He's never had anything bad to say about it.
That's what I've always heard. I've always heard, at least, I haven't seen him directly, but I've heard other co-stars say like he was a super cool guy. But I do wonder if Galaxy Quest had like any preceding impact on that, because like he has the most interesting arc, because he has the most like kind of 0 to 100 in terms of his direct relationship with his own character.
Yeah, so Jason's arc is basically he has to come to terms with the fact that he is more than the character he played on that show, because he holds on to the glory days of Galaxy Quest, and when he's summoned by the aliens to save them against Saren, he basically is...
Saris. Saren is the villain of the first Mass Effect.
Oh, that's what I'm confusing it with.
We said it, that we made the same flubs in the actual reaction we did too.
Wow.
Some people were commenting that.
So when Mathesar and the aliens are basically like, you gotta help save us, he immediately takes on that role, right?
Yeah.
Because he wants to hold on to the glory days, and he has to realize... he has to come to terms with the fact, literally, that like, I am not that person anymore, but it's okay. I can be a good person. I can be more than that outside of that character.
And he also learns to cherish his team too, because before he had his own separate table. He came in, he was, again, he did gigs without the rest of the crew, the cast.
Yeah.
And by the end of the movie, when everyone's celebrating, remember how he like brings them over to stand with him?
Exactly. But then on the opposite end, what's Alan Rickman's character's name? I have it written right here. Which, by the way, let's just shout out the fact that Alan Rickman had to wear that ridiculous makeup.
The entire movie. God, we barely see, like, we see the cracks through it at the end of the movie when the suits or the headpiece is falling apart.
Yeah, his character's name is pretty great, Alexander Dane.
That is a good name.
His character's arc is basically him you know, understanding why people love the thing that he made so much. Like understanding why it means so much to people. And it's a thing that I bet a lot of actors who are in these big IP projects and are kind of like, I don't get why you guys are so crazy about this. I want to do other stuff. You know, I played King Lear. Is that the
Yeah. I played Richard III.
I played Richard III. Well, I want to do these serious acting roles. Why do you love this so much? And it's him like understanding like, oh no, I didn't take into account that this actually means something deeper to people than I ever realized.
Yeah. I mean, the aliens are kind of used as that vessel, right? Obviously, they're kind of a metaphor for just hardcore Galaxy Quest fans. That's really what the aliens are meant to be, you know? And it's supposed to, parallel the delusion that it kind of jokes about fans having that parasocial relationship with the fictional characters.
Well, that's where it comes in. What I was saying, it's able to make fun of that and also be loving towards that at the same time.
And the biggest scene that demonstrates that is obviously Quellic once he's passing away.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, yeah. Let's talk about that for a second because I think we just keep touching on it, but I think it's an important thing to bring up.
Yeah, it's arguably the most important scene in the movie, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I would argue, and this is a scene we can talk about when we talk about the alien performances. I would argue that the Jason and Mathis scene.
That's true. When he reveals the truth to him. Yeah.
But throughout the entire movie, he's like annoyed by his catchphrase, by Grabthar's hammer.
You shall be avenged.
And I remember in our reaction, and I was like, "Oh, this is basically Harrison Ford." Like this is, you know. But his iconic line is like, "By Grabthar's hammer, you shall be avenged." And towards the beginning of the movie, same thing, like "Never give up, never surrender," where like that's a super cheesy line. I understand why he's annoyed by that. But when he's at the convention and he does the pose with his fist against his heart, everyone's going crazy. And whenever someone comes up to him, they want to say the line.
Yeah. I think like one of the closer parallels to that in real life is probably the actors from Grand Theft Auto 5.
Oh, interesting.
Because they're just for people who don't play video games or anything. I'll be quick, but there are 3 main actors in Grand Theft Auto 5. There are 3 different characters you switch between, and one of them is just notably more iconic. The character's name is Trevor Phillips. You've seen the game a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
Trevor is a fucking nutcase. His character is insane. He's supposed to be kind of a vessel for like what Grand Theft Auto players are like. So
I remember watching you play Grand Theft Auto, and it was like Trevor's like basically the entrance to his storyline. It's basically a day in Trevor's life, and it starts with him like in his house getting up to shit, but then it basically ends with him breaking out of a meth lab and on a plane. I'm like, that's his day.
Yeah, exactly. He's insane. And so point is, though, the actor that played Trevor, his name is Stephen Ogg, and nowadays he does not like to be called Trevor. He has a cameo. That's the weird part. He has a cameo, but when people ask him to do shit as Trevor, he'll be in the video just saying like, yeah, you know, I played a cartoon character, you know, so I don't see the thing. Like, he really writes off the character of Trevor as a cartoon. He literally calls it that. And so the other 2 actors are very argumentative about it in separate interviews. They'll say like, you know, yeah, no, I mean, I love what GTA did for me, and it's not a cartoon. And they, you know, they'll do shit like that, like clearly throwing shade. So I'm not gonna. Here's the thing: if I saw Stephen Ogg on the streets, I would not call him Trevor. Like, I won't. If he wants to not be called that, I will not do that. Of course, you know what I'm saying. Like, I'll respect his wishes. But there is something kind of sad about it, where it's like, oh, but also that role was it meant so much to people, and it did so much for him and his career too. I don't know. It's hard I can't really decide that for him. Because I can imagine fans would annoy him and be like, hey, can you curse me out and do this? And he's like, dude, fuck off. I'm trying to get coffee.
It's an interesting thing because for an actor like that, and then also bringing it back to Galaxy Quest, for someone like Alan Rickman's character, Alexander, he's had so many people probably come up to him and be like, by Grabthar's hammer, right? But the person that's coming up to him at that moment, that's their first time interacting with him. And for them, this is going to be a life moment that I'm going to get to say to him by Grabthar's hammer. And I will now remember that for the rest of my life. And I will tell my kids, you know that actor in Galaxy Quest? I got to say that to him.
Yeah.
But for Alan Rickman, he's heard that a million times, right? And so it's an interesting dynamic coming to the parasocial relationship of just like, I know you, I grew up with you on my television, but you don't know me, you never met me.
Yeah.
But when I'm going to meet you, it's going to be the most special moment in my life, but for you, it's going to be another fan. And it's interesting. Like, Mark Hamill has always been able to have that balance really well.
He navigated it pretty well. Yeah.
Mark Hamill does make fun of the fans sometimes too. He always jokes about like, if I didn't do Force Awakens, you all would be at my house. But he also has like, he he'll do like hour-long talks at these conventions just by himself. Like he'll just be himself on stage and he'll do the Joker voice. He'll do Luke's famous lines and you know. So he balances that really well. And what's insane about this movie is that you're laughing at the aliens, their mannerisms, and one of the aliens, what's his name?
Mathesar or Quellic?
Quellic. Quellic attaches himself to Alan Rickman and is like, by Grabthar's hammer. And he's like, seriously, don't say that. I'm being serious.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, okay. And they kind of stay together, fight together. And at the moment where he sacrifices himself and he says, it's been an honor, that's finally the moment where he looks at him and he says the line.
Yeah.
And it's that moment that it's a claptrap moment where you're like, he's going to save him. He's finally accepting who he is. But the reason why it's so moving is what I said, is it's because he's finally understanding the value in what he brought to people with this character. And he's not shunning it away. He's finally getting it.
Yeah. And you see that, it obviously touched a nerve with him, but like right after he dies, how he gets up and just runs and attacks the alien.
Yeah.
Now he's like fully invested in saving these people. It's no longer about like just reliving your glory days or any of that. He's actually trying to save this race of people.
But I think it's like a super strong metaphor about like an artist and their relationship with their fans,
Yeah,
and
100%.
how you can come full circle into like loving that again.
So do you want to talk about the what are they called again? The Thermites? The
Thermians.
Thermians, yeah.
I think they're Thermians. Let me look it up really quickly because I don't want to do any injustice to their race.
Yeah, of course.
Thermians.
I remember
it injustice or injustice?
In that context, I think it's injustice. I don't even know if injustice is an actual word, so I think just say injustice.
Okay, Thermians.
Okay, Thermians, yeah, because I remember, what was it? Didn't Tim Allen call them like termites or something? When he was, so, like the termites?
Well, from the moment they show up at the convention to when they show up at Tim Allen's house, all of it, they have like a similar walk. They have this dynamic where they're in the same wavelength, and obviously they're aliens and they're a species, so it makes sense. But if you zoom out and look at them as actors, it feels like they were in a separate acting camp and they rehearsed for 6 months, because when they're on the set together, they're immediately in sync. They're playing off each other so well.
Yeah, they feel like one unified race. That doesn't really... It's like they do it so well where they feel like aliens that are in human costumes, because that's essentially what they are. You see their true form. They're these weird squids with all these little tools and stuff.
I know. It is amazing. Like, oh, we're so sorry.
Yeah. Like, what the hell?
When they forget to put the disguise on.
Yeah, the decoys or whatever they call them. And they're all like incredibly pale too, because they've been in space. They have no idea what the concept of sunlight is.
And they're trying to imitate what they've seen on TV.
Exactly.
They're not only just the ship and like their whole way of operating, they're basing it off of like what they've seen Galaxy Quest, which they call historical documents.
Oh yeah, but they have physiologies that they do not understand.
I think the moment where I was kind of also I laughed the hardest and I was also blown away by their performances as a group was when they're trying to explain like the idea of a television program. When Alan Rickman's like, do you have TV?
Do you have theater?
And one of them, I don't know if it was Sigourney Weaver or it was Tim Allen, but one of them are just like, well, you don't expect the people in Gilligan's Island to be real. And they all are just like,
those poor people.
But like they like back up, like why would you bring that up right now? Like that is so dire. Like they're so horrified. It's like they saw like Holocaust footage. They're like, oh no.
I know, it's a dark moment in our past. Gilligan's Island.
They'll never be saved.
I think one of my favorite small moments as well is when they're in his house and Tim Allen's like bent over, with wearing only that button-up shirt.
And they're talking about how much of an honor it is to be.
Yeah, and then Tim Allen says like, hey, you see another shoe that looks like this? And they just look up at the ceiling.
Well, 3 of them look up and one of them looks outside. Like it's like
they don't know anything. Like they have no concept of where it would be.
Yeah, and
or the girl that doesn't have her translator was broken.
That I remember in the reaction, I like lost it when she was.
And he's like, all right.
And also, it is just great seeing Rainn Wilson in that kind of role.
Yeah, it arguably feels like Dwight's past before joining Dunder Mifflin or something.
It's a great like piece of history to see, like, oh, that's where, like, you could see like that, like the Dwight, that's where it clicked.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think specifically the performance I really want to talk about is Mathesar.
Yeah.
I think he is such an endearing character because not only just the love that he has for Jason, Tim Allen's character, but also just because of like, he is someone that like truly believes, you know? It is just, you immediately connect to him as an audience member because he really, really believes in it.
Yeah, and they don't, no one in that whole race, including Mathesar, they don't whine or victimize themselves through their circumstances. You know what I mean? Even like you learn later that they're the last of their race. Like, but they don't dump that information. Be like, you gotta help. They don't try to make Tim Allen feel sorry for them. They just ask for help, assuming that, oh well, they're just helpful people. We need that. But they're kind of like, oh yes, Ceres is a very bad man indeed. But they don't have that, like, you know, yeah, like you said, they stay hopeful.
Yeah,
and it changes the energy. It raises the stakes. You know, it makes the actors actually invested in what they're doing too.
I also just was all his little noises that he was making, I loved. They're like, ah.
Oh yeah, when how they laugh, and they're like, ah, ah.
That's when I say, like, I've actually never seen something like that on screen. It is a truly like transcendent performance because no one talks like this.
I know. And it's not annoying. It doesn't feel like he's trying to steal attention.
No, it's the opposite. I want him to talk more.
Yeah, 100%. This isn't what Mathesar did, but I remember when the actor from Monk was about to use
Tony Shalhoub.
Tony Shalhoub, when he's going to beam up Tim Allen. Remember when he like starts to touch the controls and the alien next to him's like, woo! And he's like, I'm sorry, this is very exciting to see. He just makes little high noises.
Yeah. Well, the also the whole thing is like they can't believe that, like, wow, these people that we saw in the historical documents, they're now going to save us. So they're sitting in the chairs that we saw them at.
Exactly, and we would be the same way if we saw fucking Harrison Ford not knowing that he's not really Han Solo sit in the Millennium Falcon. We'd freak out.
Yeah, well, that's why we all like lost our shit when like the trailer came out and Harrison Ford and Chewie are just like, Chewie, we're home, and we're like, oh, it's my friends again.
Chewie, we're home.
Remember that feeling before like Force Awakens came out? That trailer dropped.
Oh yeah.
And for a small moment of time, none of us were cynical, and we were just like, yeah, man.
I know, man.
And like the whole like bullshit discourse wasn't there yet.
I know. I'll always remember Jeremy Johns' video when
his reaction to the trailer.
Well, yeah, when Rise of Skywalker came out, he instant replayed his reaction to the trailer when he has his little blanket looking up like a little kid, and he's like, "Yeah, well, that came and went."
And it's like, yeah, it was that moment of like where we all just lost our innocence a little bit. But that's kind of another thing about watching this movie at this time, of seeing these aliens still have that innocence about their fandom.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is, I think the reason maybe it got to me so emotionally is because I personally feel like I've lost that. I've gotten way more cynical about not only fandom, but just in general, like entertainment and art that I consume.
Yeah.
For instance, like 5 years ago, if I found out that Deadpool and Wolverine were going to be in a movie together, I would have been like, oh, that's so cool. You know what I mean? And now I'm scoffing while everyone's clapping at the trailer. And I'm like, oh, where did that happen? How did that happen to me? Mm-hmm. And it's a product of getting older, seeing these things take shape in a way that you didn't expect. But that's the reason why I think I connected so much to the aliens. Of like, it was me kind of remembering that moment of watching the Force Awakens trailer and seeing the Millennium Falcon zoom in, and you hear the Han and Leia theme, and you're like, Star Wars is back. Like,
yeah. There's a purity about it, you know. And I think the fact that the aliens also, like, they don't understand the concept of lying or deception only enhances it more.
Oh, well, that is I think this is where we can talk about that scene.
Yeah, because, well, just to lead up to it real quick, is that, like, to me, it's just interesting because, again, it's a perfect, like, obstacle for actors to be dealing with that. You know what I mean? People who who think it's just literally real. Because that's probably how a lot of actors who are in big franchises like you talked about with Marvel and Star Wars, that's probably how a lot of actors feel about their hardcore fans.
Yeah.
They're like, wow, they didn't even see, like, I don't know anything about who Harrison Ford actually is. I have a rough idea from interviews, but him on his downtime, I know nothing about what he does in his downtime.
But to people that like, Han Solo is my best friend.
People feel that way, exactly. A lot of people feel that. Because you and I, we've been in LA for a while. We know influencers, and we've met a couple actors in their time. I've hung out with some actors that are in CW shows and shit like that.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing from them that like it'd be like some fans who didn't like their character because they're supposed to be an unlikable character on the show would say like, yeah, I don't know why I'm sorry to say this, but I'm kind of glad you're sick. They would say weird shit because they're so attached to the fiction. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That they don't see like a real person there.
Yeah, and it's interesting because like at the same time that we decided to do this podcast, I'm also reading, like I've seen the movie, but I'm reading the Misery book for the first time.
Yeah, that's a good parallel too.
If you want like an exact opposite point of view on what fandom is,
a much more cynical and scary point of view.
No, many people have seen the movie, and maybe many of you have probably read the book. But if you haven't read the book, highly recommend it because like you've read it, or no, you've read part of it.
Yeah.
But reading it, it's like it dives deeper into what this writer thinks of his readers, and like how they have this like specific feeling of like, you killed this character in the book, but it's not the fact that you killed a character, you killed a part of me.
Yeah.
And now I hate you for killing a part of me. And now that's a very like dark and point of view on how to look at fandom and a creator's relationship with its fans. And this movie has a more like optimistic take on it, but it is interesting. Now, getting specific,
Misery is toxic fandom. If you had to separate it.
Yeah. But I think specifically getting to the thing you were talking about of just how these aliens, they look at like when he brings up like, do you guys have theater, art, like entertainment, stuff like that. Oh, you're talking about lying.
Yeah.
You're talking about deception. And that's how they look at it. It's like, and when when Jason has to admit to Mathesar, it's just like, I'm a liar.
Yeah, I lied.
And he is breaking down. He can't believe it.
Yeah.
And I think the moment that really makes me like tear up is when he looks at the screen and he's just like, but over there it looks so real.
Oh yeah, when he explains to him how the ship, he's like, it's this big, it's tiny.
Yeah.
And then he looks at the screen, he's like, but on the image I see so many rooms. He just thinks like, oh, like it can't be that small because look, it's a real ship.
Yeah.
And he has to explain what it's made of, how he says like it's made of plaster, we had to build this thing, and
the decoration is just Christmas decorations.
Yeah.
It's Christmas lights. But it's the moment where he looks at Mathesar and he's like, God, I am so sorry.
Yeah.
And I think, you could look at it this way. You could look at it on a surface level. He's obviously just apologizing for lying, and but also it's him kind of
everything that he was inspired by, everything that motivated that, because they modeled their whole society off of that piece of fiction, finding out that none of it was real, and also on top of that, like just to add an extra, he's being tortured by Saris, and he's thinking right when they came and remember how happy he was, he's like, oh, you guys are getting it now.
But at that moment also, it's that feeling of Tim Allen's character having to come to terms with the fact of just like, man, what is my life?
Yeah.
I'm holding on to this character I played, and I pretended that I still am him.
Well, that's what he says at the end of the speech, too, when he says, like, it's fake. It's all fake, just like me.
Yeah, and it's like, it's a feeling that I'm sure, like, many actors who've spent years of their lives doing this thing, that so many people love. And actors always talk about is, like, it's a very weird feeling being famous.
Yeah.
And you go into rooms where tons of people want a piece of you and they want to take pictures of you and they want to know more about the character you play because they love that character. And then suddenly you got to go home where it's quiet.
Where you're just a normal guy.
And you're by yourself.
And you got to eat. You got to take a piss.
And
you got to sleep.
And he said that feeling is so tough. And it's like that scene earlier where like Tim Allen's in his home by himself watching his TV and getting drunk and just repeating the lines. I'm like, that's all he only understands himself through that.
Well, that's how his whole life was shaped by.
And
like Galaxy Quest changed his life, obviously.
But his arc in that movie is like he can still be inspiring to people without holding on to the past.
Yeah, and not making it entirely about him. You know, that like you can have like there's more to life, that like life is also about the relationships and the friendships. That he didn't go through that alone. You know what I mean? He's with other people that are going through the same thing, and they can kind of be in it together.
Yeah. Really quickly, I want to bring up two performances that we haven't really brought up. Sigourney Weaver is in this movie, and she probably made me laugh the most in terms of the human characters, just because first of all, it's fun seeing Sigourney Weaver do this type of role because it's so against type.
Well, her iconic role is...
But almost intentionally to put Sigourney Weaver, because for a while, I think Sean Fennessy brought this up in the big pitch. No, Sean Fennessy brought this up in Rewatchables when they did when they did an episode on the first Alien movie. That Sigourney Weaver, there's not many actresses like her, because for a while she was like the one actress that could open an action movie.
Yeah.
And she became iconic for that. Ripley's one of her most iconic roles. So to put her in this movie is like the most meta thing you can do.
Yeah, just make her like the useless blonde, basically, is what they gave her.
How like, yeah. Well, my favorite moment is when like the AI machinery were telling Tim Allen's character what's wrong with the ship, and she would just repeat it.
Yeah, between the computer and Tim Allen.
And that guy is just like, that's getting really annoying. It's like, listen, I have one job on this ship and I'm going to do it.
It's stupid, but I'm going to do it.
Or like the line where she's just like, whoever wrote this episode should die.
Yeah. I know. It's like, what's the point of having all these smashy thingies in the hallway? This episode was badly written.
I also really love Sam. I just want to acknowledge everyone. I really love Sam Rockwell in this too.
Oh, yeah, as Guy.
As Guy.
The one who's worried the most about being an extra that they're going to kill off is named Guy.
So that's something I want to bring up, is that he's very much about, like, I'm the guy that you kill off, or I'm the guy that stays in the ship. This movie's really good about having a lot of meta jokes without being annoying. It's interesting, because nowadays when movies do stuff like this, and they have a character like that is super aware of the movie they're in, it's like acid to me.
You get viscerally angry. I know.
It's like salt on the wound for me, because I'm just like, why? I'm not stupid. And I think the reason it works in this movie is because the movie's about that. It's about it's about the commentary for that. But I think it's like the nowadays I feel like this type of character, the Guy type of character, is in all movies.
Yeah, where it's not needed at all. They'll say like, this is like that scene on Die Hard or something where you're like, dude, shut up.
There's a moment in the new Roadhouse movie which is unwatchable. Whenever I talk about that Roadhouse movie, I feel like I'm giving a State of the Union.
You're giving like a eulogy, it feels like.
Because I was rooting for that movie. Anyways, there's a character in the new Roadhouse movie. She runs a bookshop, and Jake Gyllenhaal's character is an ex-UFC fighter that needs a job, so he goes to work at this bar, this Roadhouse at the Keys in Florida. And when he shows up in this area, it's kind of like he shows up kind of like this guy out of place, like a Western hero. That's what the movie's trying to go for, right? And he goes to this bookshop, local bookshop, just checking it out. He's checking out the town, and he picks up a Western novel. And she's like, hey, you're kind of like this cowboy in this book, you know, coming into a town you don't know. And I was immediately kind of rolling my eyes, but I was ready to forgive it. But throughout the movie, this character just keeps popping up, and it's just like, it's like that cowboy, you know, that lost its way, but it's trying to find relationships in the town it's in, but it doesn't really fit in. And then when the movie's about to end, my friend that I was watching with was saying, oh, I bet she's going to say something like, oh, what are you going to do, ride off into the sunset? She literally looks at Jake Gyllenhaal and she's like, oh, you're just like one of those cowboys that's just going to ride off at the sunset. I literally like put my 2 middle fingers up to the TV. I'm like, fuck you. And the reason why Guy works in this movie is because this movie's like intentionally...
It's about fiction.
It's about fiction, and it's supposed to be meta. The annoying thing is that this Sam Rockwell character just became... After Ryan Reynolds, it just became this character in every movie.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think it was nice of the movie, too, just to give, like, a shout-out to the extras in these shows and in these big iconic franchises.
Yeah, it's a true love letter to every aspect.
The stormtroopers that died, or what are they called? The red shirts, I think, on Star Trek.
Yeah,
like always those random crew members that get killed.
And it's always, it's like a love letter to every aspect of it.
Yeah.
And then I think the last performance I want to hit on before we talk about we can start talking about the ending now. Do you want to? The final set piece of it?
I do want to cover like one or two more things real quick, just as a kind of a speed run shout out.
I want to touch on Justin Long, but I think maybe we can touch on him once we get like to the final like third act.
Sure.
Okay, so
I would just let's give a shout out to what I forgot his name again. The actor
Tony Shalhoub, who is basically like stoned throughout this entire movie.
I want to say comments said the original cut was a little edgier, and he was supposed to be heavily implied to be stoned. Yeah. And so without that, he's kind of like this weird dude that's just kind of chilling the whole time. Which he's funny. I loved him, and I also loved how it ends up leading to him falling in love with one of the aliens. Because you got to have like an alien crossbreeding sex scene in these types of movies.
My favorite delivery is Sam Rockwell just being like, "Oh, that's not right.
Oh, that's not right."
No, that worked really well. But my favorite Tony Shalhoub moment was when he's just like, "So I think we're gonna have to do this and this to fix the ship," and Tim Allen's like, "All right, let's do it." And Tony Shalhoub looks at all the other aliens, one of them being Rainn Wilson. He's like, "We're right again, guys. All right, come on, let's group hug. And he just comes in there to have a little moment.
I know. Or when they first, how like when they first transport to the ship, how they are covered in that weird gel and that just zips them through space.
Yeah.
Remember how he just pops up and he's just kind of like, that's a hell of a thing, and everyone else is like shaking.
Yeah, he pops up like 3 minutes later.
And he's so mellow. He's like, wow, he's like, what's wrong with them?
Yeah, it is funny that whole thing got cut of him getting stoned, but it just makes it funnier that like now without that context, he's just being really weird.
Yeah, he's just a weird, chill guy.
Yeah, I guess you could also interpret it like that space travel really fucked him up.
Yeah. I also want to give a shout out to the creature design. Saris, wow, I did it now. Saris looks awesome. His makeup looks so cool. He's always all glistening.
Well, you know who it was?
Remind me.
Stan Winston.
Yeah, it was, which is crazy. It works perfectly.
You know what he did?
Yeah.
Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And you could tell too, especially like the small details, like when Saren gets, oh my fucking God, you did this to me now. When Saris gets angry, how those little wings kind of sprout.
Yeah.
And he's like, find them! And his wings come up.
I remember in the reaction when it cuts to Saris, and when it cuts to him in the ship for the first time, I like had like a what kind of movie are we in moment? Because I think up until then the movie's very much like, okay, they're in this convention, they have these fans, Tim Allen gets summoned, suddenly the limo like levitates.
Yeah.
And it gets beamed up, and I had that moment of like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Because I genuinely didn't know anything about this movie. But when it commits to the bit 100% and it cuts to this alien ship with this villain and this creature design, I had this moment, I'm like, oh, this is the vibe?
Yeah, like this is a movie.
But the world feels fully realized. Like they have to go through the asteroid belt, and they explain that very clearly, how they're magnetic and everything. And then that final set piece where the magnetic like minefields are all behind them.
Yeah, it pays off so well.
Yeah, it is able to pull off both being a satire, but also like a pretty good sci-fi action movie with great creature effects, like you said.
For the pig lizard. Remember that? That thing was so cool looking. It's so disgusting.
So dope. I love the big lizard.
Tim Allen's just kind of trying to thwip it with his shirt.
I also love Garignac.
Yeah. Then once the actual Garignac rock monster comes out, and Tim Allen realizes that's what all those little alien toddlers are cheering for.
And then when Garignac gets beamed out into space after killing all those people and having a little hero moment.
Yeah.
But when it gets beamed out into space, it has kind of like an Iron Giant type shot. He's like, well, I saved the day.
I just wanted to give a shout out to all those elements too. Even the ship design was really interesting looking. I forget, what's the name of the guy, I'm sure you have it on your list of the cast. The pedal to the metal commander, the guy who flies the ship.
Oh, yeah, who was like in the Galaxy Quest show, he was a kid.
Yeah, he was a little kid. Now
I like that touch, by the way. He was a kid character, which in their mind, I'm just like, we need to have a kid character in the show. So, like, it would appeal to kids.
And how, like, the aliens are like, oh, wow, you've grown up.
You're like, wow, look at you. The actor's name is Well, the character's name is Tommy Weber.
Tommy Weber. Okay.
And the actor's name is Daryl Mitchell.
Got it. Okay, yeah, because I really liked his character too. He had a fun arc where he actually had to figure out the mechanics of how to fly it, and there's that famous scene where he's like kind of coasting a little to the left, and you can see all of them kind of turning their heads like, oh, you're getting a little far, and then it starts scraping against the side.
When a comedy, this movie is basically a comedy, right? But when nowadays when movies are like comedies that are also action movies, they're genre pieces a lot of the times, but a lot of times when you see a comedy that's attached to a genre, they don't pull off the other genre that well.
Yeah, it's hard to do hybrid, and a lot of movies attempt to do hybrid.
But it's weird that nowadays everything's hybrid.
And I know, that's what I'm saying, and not all of it works. When they action comedies, horror comedies, usually...
The last movie that I was able to pull off the hybrid thing, I felt like was the new Dungeons and Dragons movie.
Oh yeah, that was a fun one. I also like
that was able to be like a really funny comedy while also like having set pieces that are super well done. There's a creature in that Dungeons and Dragons movie, Jonathan.
Yeah.
Jonathan is a real thing. They built that suit.
I know, it looks so cool.
But I think the reason why the creature stuff is important to bring up, because if anyone who has not only listened to our podcast, but has been watching our reactions for a while, this is the stuff we appreciate. We appreciate when a movie that's a hybrid movie is able to pull off and commit to the genres it's in. Like Galaxy Quest is an extremely funny movie. I laughed out loud many times by myself, which is hard to do, right? When you're by yourself watching a movie at home, it's hard to really make you laugh out loud, but this movie did that. But then also the fact that it cuts to the alien ships, and when it's a sci-fi movie, it really works. It really works as an action movie. It's able to do... That's what I mean by not... Like, everyone who worked on this movie showed the fuck up.
Yeah.
It means a lot to me because it felt like, okay... They cared. Like, they actually cared about the stuff that they were making. It wasn't just this is going to sell well, we should do an action movie along with this because it's going to work. But the fact that they're like, okay, if we're going to make a villain, let's get Stan Winston on here, and he's going to fucking build this thing. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, they put thought into it. You know, they were actually creative and clearly understood, you know, those sci-fi romps that they were trying to draw from.
When they summoned the lizard onto the ship, I remember, like, when it exploded, it had, like, his intestines were very colorful.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a thing that, like, Evil Dead did. And also, when the Deadites die, you see, like, the colored organs. But also, obviously, The Thing did. Mm-hmm. We just need to get back to that. Like, we need to get to, like, aliens and creatures having colorful organs.
Well, and I know, just tiny little shout out to when they first transported and it's inside out. And
that's what I'm talking about.
No, I know, but I'm just saying the comedic beat when everyone's like, oh, no, it's fine, Jason. And the alien's like, yeah, except the creature's inside out. And then it blows up and everyone ducks and he just stands there and all the like guts land on him. It's like, and it exploded. All of that line is just in my head from when I was a kid.
Yeah. Okay, so you wanna talk about that final set piece?
Hell yeah, let's do it.
The joy I had when I watched this for the first time, and I completely forgot about this beat. I have to tell you, because it's been a while since I've seen the full movie.
There's a little fly bug.
It's annoying the hell out of me. Jesus. Remember when I like slapped a fly from your hand in the last podcast?
Yeah. You know, so should it have been my turn? Is that what you're getting at?
You didn't do it.
It was like around your face. So should I have just like given you a little wallop?
You missed your chance.
Yeah, I guess so, huh? You got it?
I don't know.
Okay, fair enough.
But what was I going to say? Oh, yeah. Okay. So I didn't fully remember that this beat, because it's been a while since I've seen the full movie. But the joy I felt when they were like, I know someone who does know. And suddenly it cuts to Justin Long. And you're like, they're bringing him in because he knows about the ship more than they do.
Yeah, they set it up in the very beginning. He was trying to ask Jason about the mechanics of the ship and the physics of it.
When I first watched this movie, I was like, oh, cute, a nice little Justin Long cameo. It's so perfect for him being a nerdy fan. But then when he shows up in the final act, I'm like, that's why they casted him.
And it enhances his arc, too, because he yelled at him in the beginning, too.
And now he needs his help.
Yeah, now he needs his help and actually, like, truly appreciates him.
The beat that I love is that suddenly, like, right when they need his help, he has to go take out the trash.
Oh, yeah. And also he has to preface, he's like, listen, I'm not a total brain case. I know it's not a real ship.
He's like, it is real. I knew it.
Exactly.
And suddenly he brings the people who knows the code.
Oh, yeah. He has like his squad. They all hop up on like FaceTime, basically, their version of it.
Yeah. And that's an also interesting like thing that this movie's trying to say is that once you make the thing and people become super fans of it, it's not really theirs anymore. It's the fans' piece of art.
Yeah.
Like, Star Wars is not for George Lucas, it's for us. You know what I mean? It's kind of that thing. And filmmakers talk about it all the time, is like, you make the movie that's in your head a lot, and if it's become successful, it's great, but it also is this kind of separation thing of like, oh, it's not mine anymore.
Yeah.
Like, you know, Lord of the Rings is for the people who've devoted their entire lives to rewatching those movies during the holidays and dressing up as the hobbits. It's theirs now. And that's what this movie's trying to say with Justin Long, is like, he knows more about the ship because he's consumed this more than the people who have made this.
Yeah, yeah. Which is how it would go. I think I've read like a lot of the original cast of Star Trek all appreciated this movie in different ways too. And a lot of them do highlight that part where they're like, yeah, if I were in that situation, I would call the fans. I would have no fucking clue what to do.
Yeah, because they are more familiar with it than the people who made it.
Yeah.
And you obviously get those fun beats, like I already said, Sigourney Weaver's character yelling and being like, who wrote this episode? And all that stuff. But the idea of the ship crash landing into the convention is just brilliant.
Yeah, yeah. When he rips right through. I even made a joke during the reaction. I don't know if you've watched it recently, but I just was like, 13 people died that day. Like, I made some kind of joke because it just fucking plows through the wall.
You know what I think of is in The Last Jedi, Mr. Plinkett review from Red Letter Media, when the X-Wing crashes, and Mr. Plinkett's like, oh my God, run!
Yeah, I know. But yeah, I think especially because like, yeah, Justin Long's there trying to like use the firecrackers to flag the ship down so it can have a place to land.
Oh, such a cool shot too when the ship like whizzes by and he ducks and then he looks up right into camera.
I know, it's like a Michael Bay shot or something.
So after they're able to stop the countdown successfully, they feel like they're done. They're like, we did it. But I love the moment when Mathesar and everyone comes in and is just like, oh yeah, you were lying.
Yeah, of course. What a deception.
And they all
They're like, yeah, for listeners, I just started mimicking the clap.
yeah.
Mimicking the clap. That's a weird sentence. Anyway, though, so everything's all right with the world, and then all of a sudden, the guy from Monk, I'm not going to remember his name.
Shalhoub.
Tony Shalhoub. I almost said Schlob. But Tony Shalhoub comes in, and he abruptly shoots Jason in the stomach, and just starts just shooting everyone. It's just really abrupt. You're like, what the hell? And he turns into Saris, and he starts killing everyone. And they do such a cool thing of paying off the Omega-13 by activating it because he didn't know what it was. No one really knew what it was. That was the whole thing. That's why the aliens are going after them.
And that's also a very like Star Trek moment of going back in time a few seconds to stop this one thing from happening. Yeah.
And they set it up very nicely because that was the cliffhanger that the show left off on, that none of them knew what it did. But the fans had a theory. They said, well, okay, people have said it might be a matter change. You know, it might change matter where it goes back 13 seconds. They planted it earlier where they had different fan theories of what it could be.
Yeah, it is a movie. I just don't understand how it was able to balance the cynicism towards fans while also being very loving towards them.
Well, the movie itself changes its attitude. It feels like the first like chunk of the movie, it makes the fans out to be a little dorkier, where you see them all like lined up at the urinals, all in costumes, and then you hear people making fun of Jason in the bathroom, like, oh, he's a laughingstock and he has no idea. But over the course of the movie, you start feeling like that real sincerity through the aliens, I think.
Yeah. And then they find out that you can go back in time, and Saris comes back, and it's at first like Tim Allen starts shooting him. He's like, hey, what are you doing? Because they think it's Tony Shalhoub that he's shooting at. He's like, no, it's Saris, he came back. And then our boy Mathesar just hits him. We've already mentioned this
with
scene.
his cane, yeah.
And he's like, never give up, never surrender.
Yeah. And then that's when Tim Allen lets him take control of the ship too. He's like, they have a great commander already.
Oh my God. When he just gives him the salute and then everyone does.
Yeah.
It's like that scene in
Return
of the King where he's basically, Aragorn's basically like, my friends,
you bow to no one.
And then everyone bows to the Hobbit.
Yeah, I know. So it's a beautiful moment. I just wanted to highlight that moment. I think like it's really when the elevator doors close, you know, when they're just kind of standing there like, all right, see ya.
See ya. We're going to go our separate ways.
Yeah.
And our main crew crash lands into the convention. I remember in our reaction, we're like, imagine being fans and seeing that. Yeah. Like, imagine like being at Star Wars Celebration, seeing the Millennium Falcon crash in and Harrison Ford walking out.
I know. And then, yeah, one by one, they all come out. And then all of a sudden, Saris comes out still alive. And then Tim Allen does like a front somersault.
He does the roll and shoots him, and everyone's like, "Oh my god!" Like, what a production!
You know, he explodes.
One of my favorite shots in the movie, and it's like what the movie's about, is obviously Jason. You mentioned, he brings everyone onto stage. They all do a bow together, and the camera goes from their backs to the crowd.
Yeah,
and it's like, this movie's for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's for you guys. It's like you guys are like the reason we're here. You guys are annoying. You guys are weird, but we love you.
Yeah, pretty much. You know? I know they wouldn't be anywhere where they are today. Even those corny, by Grabthar's hammer, what the savings? They need to get their checks, and that's because of the fans.
Yeah. But then I think something that happens towards the end is you get like, Galaxy Quest is being rebooted.
Yeah. The New Adventures of Galaxy Quest.
Which is like something that just doesn't age well, knowing where everything's gone now.
I know, right?
Like, I bet when the movie came out, it was just like a sweet moment, but now it's like everything's rebooted and we're all in hell.
Yeah. It's like, that show was divisive when it came out. You know what I mean? There are people who are going to be like, oh, they ruined his character.
But what really makes it for me is it's basically doing a curtain call, but it's the characters, it's the actors as the characters, really. But what really makes that whole post credit ribbon the best is when Guy comes out, but he has a last name now.
Yeah, Guy Fleegman, was that what it was?
He actually has a last name. They gave it to him.
I know. And then also having the female, I forget her name, but the female alien, how it just says Jane Doe. Like, she has no name.
And they both, like Tony Shalhoub and her, just smile together. What a lovely movie.
I know, man. The movie's just a joy. I don't know anyone that doesn't like Galaxy Quest.
Well, thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much to our patrons for supporting us again and again. Last but not least, stay nice, dudes.